Hey all, welcome back to another video. Today I want to answer a question that I get asked pretty often from folks, both here on YouTube and just kind of generally in real life, which is how many of my games have I actually played? Have I beaten? Have I completed? So this is kind of like an ongoing question for collectors, right? Often you see it from both sides. You'll see folks that are saying, every game is meant to be played. You should play every single game you own. And then there's others that'll say, well, I don't necessarily need to play every single thing that I'm picking up. I'll pick and choose from my collection the ones that I really want to play. And I don't know that there's really there's no correct answer to that, right? If you're someone that is trying to get a full set of something, or if you're trying to collect every game of a particular type, genre, series, whatever, I don't know that you have any obligation to play every single game. But for me personally, I lean more towards the other side, where I have always picked up and collected games based on a desire to play them. So almost everything in my collection, not everything, but a good majority of the things in my collection are games that I picked up because either I have memories with and I feel kind of an attachment to and want to have a copy of, to represent sort of as humans like to do, we put our emotions, we manifest them into the physical object, so I do that quite a bit. And or a lot of the games I have are things that are interesting to me and that I intend to play. So there's a lot of stuff that gets added that is sort of, in the waiting room. Something that I intend to play when I can. Now, realistically, you get into a question of scale. What's reasonable? How much can we actually get through in one lifetime? And yeah, that's something that I've always just chosen some obvious blind optimism about. I've always said, you know what? I'll get through them. I'll find the time eventually, be it now, a decade from now, when I'm retired, whatever it might be, I'll get to them. But all that said, it still begs the question: how many of them have you played through? Are you only playing a tiny subset of what is in this room, or do you pretty regularly play stuff? And I actually have the stats on this that I'm going to show you here in a second. For anyone who's not aware, I have long been a member of Backloggery, which is a website that's all about tracking your game collection and tracking what games you own that you have finished. It's Backloggery. It's very much designed on tackling your backlog. What do you have that you need to play? And so, since I registered with the site in the mid-2000s, I've been tracking every game I've finished. And thankfully, I'll be able to share all of that with you and give you the full stats, the full breakdown. You can see exactly where I'm at. I would love to know, for those of you that have this information, or even those that just have a gut check, how this stacks up to yours. So why don't we switch over? I'm going to show you my screen, and we will talk a little bit of game finishing math. All right, here we are on Backloggery. Again, if you've never been to backloggery.com, I would highly recommend that folks check out this site. It is one of my all-time favorites. It has been my homepage on the internet for a long time and has been a pretty consistent source of motivation for me as I, work through my collection. So we're going to go to my backlog. This is my Backloggery page. At first thing you're going to see here, well, first you'll see my banner. It says Blink. But you'll see, here's the games that I'm currently playing. So you can kind of track everything that you're currently working on, what your current status of it is. You'll see these different icons that show you kind of what your current status of that game is. So this little U icon means that this is an unfinished game, and this little line icon is null. So those are things that I've marked as like not something that I'm actively working on for a number of different reasons, or rather not something that's beatable for a number of different reasons. So for example, In the Groove 2, this isn't really a game you can finish. It's a rhythm game that is an arcade game. I own the arcade cabinet for it. But it's not, there's no end state. There's no credits. There's no final boss, really. You could argue that finishing all 113 songs is maybe that. And I may update that later, but it is what it is. And then Hades, this one's nulled for duplication because I have multiple versions of this. If I own multiple versions of the same game, I only count one of them in my backlog. I don't feel the need to go back and beat every version of Hades I own if I own multiple copies. That's not usually pretty common for like current gen systems, but Hades is a case where I bought the PS5 version because it ran a little bit better than Switch and I wanted to hunt the trophies. So I've been playing through the PS5 version. And you can see then what this Lost Odyssey is looking like, which is a little bit grayed out. That means that I am playing it. I've identified this as something I'm currently playing, but I haven't made any updates to this message. So in theory, I haven't made any progress on it in over 2 weeks. So if you're curious, this is what I've been working on. Now you know what games I have been enjoying. But now we get down to the big question, how many of my games have I finished? So here we go. Unfinished games. Again, this is a game with no significant accomplishments. I have 2,214 games unfinished. So 62% of the games in my collection have not been completed. Now, that's not bad, right? That means that I've finished about a third or so of my games. I've finished 24.3% are marked as beaten. And so beaten is a game whose main objective has been accomplished. So again, like I mentioned before, you beat the final boss, you saw the credits, it's a gut check thing. You finished the sort of main objective of the game. So I have done that for just under 25% of my games. So almost a quarter of my games I have played through, which I feel pretty good about, right? That's 855 games. That's a lot of games. Now, granted, this is over the course of my entire life. This is certainly not all stuff that I have just recently finished, but that feels pretty good. And that's not even counting this 12.8% of games that are completed. So completed are games that are 100% done. You've unlocked everything. You unlocked all the optional costumes. You beat it on the hardest difficulty. You've unlocked all the concept art. If it's got a platinum, you've gotten the platinum trophy. You've milked all the fun there is out of that game in terms of unlockable content. And I have done that for 12.8% of my games, which is actually really good. Again, this can vary a lot because some games, especially older retro games, which are a lot of what I own, don't really have a difference between a beat and a complete. Now, think of an old Game Boy platformer. A lot of times there's nothing to unlock. There's no hidden secrets or anything. You just kind of play through it and you finished it. Like even something like a Super Mario Brothers. Once you've beaten Super Mario Brothers, you've beaten Super Mario Brothers. So that is very much a slightly inflated number. Some of these are probably just games that I beat, but there are a good chunk of them that I have done everything on, especially in more recent generations. So that gives you a sense of my overall stats, but for those that are curious, we can look a little closer in terms of my specific consoles and systems. So, Backloggery shows you every system that you own. I think that they have since updated, so now all of them are here. You can see that my collection is 3,736 games. That's a little bit inflated, actually. So, something to note, this is not a website specifically designed to track your physical collection. This is designed to track all the games that you own that you need to play through. So that includes things like, your Steam backlog. How many games do you have on Steam that you've never finished? How many games do you have on any digital service? And that can get pretty inflated pretty quickly because, we all fall prey to those bundles of games and a Steam sale or a Steam winter sale, something like that. I've been pretty good about that lately, but there was definitely a time, especially I'd say like 2013 or so, where I was pretty susceptible to getting a lot of those digital games and humble bundles and things like that. But this site is also all completely up to you, how you want to add things, how you want to include things. If you don't want to count your digital library, you don't have to. But let's look at some of we'll focus on the physical systems mostly, just so you can get a sense of what I am kind of working on primarily. So a lot of these systems, you'll note that I have a lot more games in the chamber than I have actually finished, especially for like PlayStation systems. So I have a lot of PlayStation games I'm excited to play, stuff I've purchased for the stream, stuff that I've purchased with intention to play, but have not gotten around to, You can almost see those totals inflate as we go. PlayStation 4, I've finished less than 100 games if we combine these beat and completed numbers, but I have over twice that number still waiting for me to check out. PlayStation 5, I've been doing pretty good, right? I have been keeping up with the games that I purchase. I've generally been trying to do that as I can, because I want to kind of stay ahead of things a little bit. But at some point, I'm sure that number will start to inflate, and I will get more things than I ever could reasonably beat. PlayStation VR, again, follows a very similar pattern. PSP, I have a lot of games I've never played through, especially Vita. So Vita is one that I really fell into kind of the collecting rabbit hole. If I went back in time, I don't know that I would do it the exact same way, but I have a lot of Vita stuff that I'm just kind of like waiting to get around to. A lot of indie games that got physical releases and things like that. So considering Vita is one of my favorite handhelds ever, it's pretty surprising that I've finished only 35 games total. As we go through, you'll note that there's very few systems, in fact there's none, where I've completed everything. There's some that are close, like Famicom. I only have 3 Famicom games and I've finished 2 of them, so I just got to wrap one up and I'll be good. NES I've actually finished a lot of, which feels pretty nice. See, here's a good example of what I was talking about, where 39 of the games on my NES, or out of my NES library, I have completed, primarily because there's just not a lot of extra stuff to do. So... and that's not a bad thing. Super Nintendo, again, pretty evenly split. I like to see that. Virtual Boy, this is one that I would like to eventually finish this whole library on, but I have not gotten through that yet. I have finished only 4 of them. N64, so this is the big one for me right now. For those of you who've been hanging out on my Twitch streams, you know that I am currently working on finishing every Nintendo 64 game that I own. I have 57 total games. I only need to finish 6 more. For those that are curious, here's the 6 that I need to finish: Aero Gauge, F-Zero X, Goemon's Great Adventure, Iggy's Wreckin' Balls, Ogre Battle 64, and Wave Race. Most of these will be pretty easy. Ogre Battle's the big one, so I've been chipping away at it now, getting an early start on that. And then Goemon's Great Adventure is probably the other longer one. I just don't own the first Goemon game, and I don't know how much that is necessary to kind of understand the systems and the story of Great Adventure, so I've been putting that one off. If you know, do you need to play the 2 Goemon games in order? So do I need to play Mystical Ninja first on N64 to really understand Goemon's Great Adventure? Please do let me know. I don't know too much about those games, although I am excited to check them out. So yeah, as we go down, you see it's pretty consistent for a lot of the retro systems. I've finished more, and a lot of the newer systems I've finished less. Especially games that are easy to, or systems that are easy to collect for. I have 107 games because a lot of the games I wanted were cheap and I could pick them up pretty easily. Same with the handheld stuff. I kind of am sacred about my handheld stuff, and I don't often pop it in because I'm sort of always saving it for a rainy day that never happens. But these numbers have been going up pretty significantly this year because I dubbed this the unofficial year of the handheld, and I've been playing through a lot of my handheld games. Genesis, again, a lot that I still have to go through, and it's pretty consistent that way the whole way down. Xbox pretty even split, 360, a few more that I need to beat than I've finished. And then we get down into some of these systems that just don't have very many games at all, right? I only own one CDI game. I own CDI Tetris. Have I finished it? No, because I don't own a CDI. Nuon. I haven't finished any of my Nuon games. Actually, I think I have finished. I thought I finished Freefall. I think I finished this. I need to update that, actually. So that should be a 1. But what's cool is you can see, like, the R zone here. When you have finished or completed everything on Backloggery, you get this, like, special banner. So R zone, this is kind of cheating. I only own one R zone game, but I completed it because there's not much to do in it. It's just a fighting game. And so I get this nice complete banner. So imagine how nice that would be for all your systems. Boom, 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 boom. Complete all the way across the board. And if you've just beaten everything, you get this little beat icon, which I like quite a bit too. And so I'm always striving to get those. Most of these that I have beat or completed everything are digital libraries that I only own a few games for. And in part, that's because I have not consistently added all my digital stuff because I care more about beating my physical stuff. But yeah, that is the old Backloggery. You can see, I'll show you the trends here. It's a nice flat line. When you have a collection this big, you can't really do too much. But here's the pie chart for anyone that wants to see it. About 6% of my games are nulled, and then the rest shake down in this way. So, not too sure why these numbers are slightly different. I guess that it's taking into account the null games here when it wasn't before. But either way, you still see it's pretty close to about 2/3 of my games I still have to finish. So I've finished about 1/3 of the games that I own, which is, IMO, pretty good. So that's going to wrap it. Again, if you've never used Backloggery, I'd highly recommend that you do. This is one of my favorite sites ever, very helpful. They're also doing a big UI update soon, which is going to be quite exciting, including the ability to tag your games physical or digital, which will make tracking those libraries much easier. If you do, feel free to add me. My name is Blink on Backloggery. You can add me to your multi-tap and then see what I'm beating, what I'm working on, things like that. So yeah, that'll wrap this video up. Again, I'd love to know what your number is. How many of your games have you finished? And what's your philosophy? Do you want to finish everything like me? Or are you sort of like striving for that probably unattainable goal, but maintaining the optimism? Or are you fully content to not beat everything and you have maybe like a subset backlog of these are the games I definitely do want to finish? I love beating stuff. I talk about beating games all the time on my podcast, which is Polykill. If you're interested in a video game podcast all about beating video games, you can head over to polymedianetwork.com and check out the Polykill podcast. That has been a big motivating factor for me, and I know it has been for a lot of other folks in the community as well. So that will wrap it here. Thanks everyone for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.